Hey y'all, how y'all doing? What's up? What's up? So let's get into this Love and Marriage Huntsville tea. Well, not tea, but the episode. Look, this episode was very interesting. So it was just so much going on. The first thing I want to talk about is the whole situation with Tisha, Destiny, and Kimmy meeting up. This is my thing with Tisha. If there's nothing to the accusations about your husband stepping out on you, why do you get so activated? Well, not her getting activated, it's just that she has so much energy for it. Anytime somebody brings up Martell, for instance, all Destiny did, Destiny not bring up the podcast interview. Really it was just Kimmy bringing up the situation that happened with Destiny and Lance and his and Nell and all that stuff, and the whole thing about Destiny flirting with Lance's nephew, I think it was her, well, not necessarily flirting, but making comments about him, and how Lance didn't really care for that at Nell and Chris's, was it not reunification, was it like their vows, renewing their vows. So they talking about that situation. Destiny claiming that Kimmy started all that, and Kimmy like, no girl, you was the one that did it, so how I start all that when you're the one that's out here acting like a loosey goose. So anyway, and that is a real far back saying, like my grandmother and them will say. But anyway, so Destiny says, well, that's the same thing I'm talking about. She brought something like, that's the same thing what I'm talking about when it comes to how, Martell, like people instigating stuff or some stuff like that. That's the same thing I was trying to tell Martell, letting stuff go and moving on. And soon as Destiny says Martell, Tisha takes off and walks away and starts acting like she's looking at clothes. And Destiny's like, is that how you gonna be anytime somebody brings up somebody you don't care for in this group? And Kimmy's like, well, yeah, I think that's what it's going to be. But this is my thing. Tisha gets so worked up and activated anytime somebody brings up something somewhere in the realm of talking about infidelity within her marriage. Now, should somebody get mad if people are talking about your marriage? Absolutely. Should you get frustrated and fed up with people claiming that your husband stepping out on you? Absolutely. But how she gets so energetic and activated, and she starts trying to make sure she hurts and jabs at other people's relationships, makes me feel like there's a whole lot to the accusations. Because she immediately, and I'm going to talk about that several times in this video, she loves to hurry up and throw other people's marriages under the bus. Like, and it's not even, the people don't even have to be bringing up situations with her. She just constantly wants to bring it up. When she told Miss Nell at Trish, well, I'm about to say Trish and Ken's birthday party, it was not. It was just Trish's birthday party, but Ken was on the picture. Tisha made a good point with that. Why the hell is Ken on the picture at your birthday? But anyway, that, and she was like telling them, and what about, there's plenty of stuff going on out here about you and your husband's marriage, but I don't put that out there, I don't spread that tea. And Nell's like, okay, but the thing about it is I'm talking about us being transparent with one another. We trying to have an actual real relationship, and y'all bringing up stuff about my family, you know what I'm saying? She's like, and Will. It was so unnecessary. Like, Nell held herself together, because as soon as she would have said and Will, whole show would have been over for me. But anyway, Tisha been, I think she's gotten all this courage. I really think producers have hyped her up to let her believe that she's something that she's not. And I think Tisha about to get her feelings hurt once again in this season. So anyway, Tisha later on brings up that she takes another jab at Nell and Chris's relationship. And I'm like, Tisha, you need to stop, because later on this episode, she gets egg thrown on her face. And I'm like, I'm glad you did that, Neil. I'm glad you did that, because Tisha is doing too damn much and she's getting on my nerves. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and move on to Trish having a sit down with Miss Nell. And mind you, Trish looked really good in this episode. I made sure I made a point of it. She looked really good. I really liked her looks. The weave or wig or whatever it is they've done on her, it fits her face perfectly. Because Trish is pretty. It's just these hairstyles people be putting on her be making her look crazy. And so this look she had with her sit down with Miss Nell was everything. I gotta turn. Hopefully this doesn't start up. It's hot in here. So sorry, y'all. We just gonna have to have a little bit of. Okay, we're gonna have a little bit of background noise. So they sit down. Trish and Nell sit down, and Trish is basically. I feel like I felt like this was annoying. Every time Nell would say something about Tisha or whatever, Trish would always be like, well, I mean, you know, I think, and she's like, I don't really see what Nell is talking about, because Tisha off the show, she's not like that at all. Like, no, Tisha is two-faced. Tisha reminds me of those people that I had a friend like this. They love talking about everybody else's business. They love listening to all the tea. They love spreading all the tea about other people's business. But they lose their effing mind if you talk a 3 ounce about what they got going on in their household. And they will not talk about what's going on in their household. And my thing about that is like, you're a freaking hypocrite. What gives you permission to talk crap and trash about everybody else, but can't nobody say nothing about you or yours? I can't stand people like that. Like, keep your mouth shut. You want to run and talk about everybody else and what everybody else got going on, sitting up having a high old good time talking about other people, running other people down, but you lose your mind if somebody talks just a little bit about what you got going on in your house. So anyway, Trish is like, I don't really see what she's talking about that. And Nell's like, no, she keeps coming for me. She keeps being super activated every time I have something to say. And they were showing clips about Tisha just doing too much. Whenever it came to Nell, Tisha's always saying something slick. I remember way back when they had to sit down was Nell, Chris, Marceau, and Tisha, and Nell was just kind of confronting Tisha about like, why did you snub me from the Black Expo? And Tisha was just being totally disrespectful to Miss Nell then. And basically like, what about, she even said, what about the stuff you got going on in your house? Or what about the infidelity? Did you all discuss your infidelity? 'Cause I think Miss Nell asked her if they wanted to talk about stuff that people have been saying about them, you know, kind of discuss that stuff with her and Chris, because they've been through stuff before. And Tisha's whole energy was just completely nasty. And every time you try to have like some type of sympathy for Tisha, because she always wants to put those crocodile tears on, Tisha's a Karen. I just thought about Tisha as a whole Karen. She wants to put on those crocodile tears about how other people are coming for her constantly, but she's more than happy and more than ready to run other people down and what they got going on. So anyway, what irritated me about this scene was Trisha constantly trying to defend Tisha. And then on top of it, she's constantly criticizing everything that Miss Nell did in that situation at her birthday party. But I'm like, okay, Trish, okay, you trying to be the quote mediator. I want you to run all this stuff down to Tisha, because I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we're going to see a single scene where Trish is going to come and confront Tisha about her behavior. And that's why I was saying Tisha, I feel like Trisha is trying super hard to just be accepted. And I think what the producers of this show has done, and we were all saying, a lot of us were saying this back a couple of seasons ago, that we believe that the producers have hyped up Tisha and Marceau, making them believe they're the next it couple, that they were going to replace Melody and Martell. And they've hyped them up to the point where they feel like they're invincible and they're untouchable. And to the point where I think everybody else on the show has adjusted to that. You know, they're like, oh, don't, you know, more, it's better to befriend the Scotts and be a friend of the Scotts than to be their enemy, because then you're going to have Kimmy, Maurice, Marcel, and Tisha all coming at you as a force of four. And that's why I said this show is not going to be successful if they keep the four of them on here together, because they become this whole, how do you say it? Like, they just become this group that everybody has to contend with on the show. And I don't like stuff like that. It's kind of like a Robin and Gazelle situation, or a Evelyn and Shawnee situation on Love and Basketball Wives. Yeah, on Basketball Wives. I hate stuff like that, because it's like you don't get real stories and real storylines and real action when you got a group of people that's basically puppeting everybody else on the show. That's trash. And they've done that with the Scotts, and it's annoying. They need to break up the Scotts, or they need to bring another couple on there that's powerful enough and forceful enough to fight back at the Scotts. Unfortunately, since Martell couldn't keep his thing in his pants and wanted to take it all over Huntsville and Atlanta, all the way up to wherever the other girl from Ohio, that Melody and Martell couldn't be, because that's what Melody and Martell were on that show. They kept the Scotts in check. And what I mean by that is that they had enough history and back information on the Scotts to keep them in line, where they wouldn't get too crazy, too slick at the mouth with them. But when the producers decided to start protecting the Scotts and trying to encourage them to be the next it couple on the show, that's where the Scotts were able to successfully talk about all the dirt and trash on Melody and Martell, while keeping their own dirt and trash constantly under wraps, constantly getting pushed and swept under the rug. And so it's so annoying to see Trish is falling in line, like Destiny fell in line. Trish is falling in line. And the reason why Miss Nell is getting so much backlash is because Miss Nell is not falling in line. Okay? So, yeah, I'm like, Trish, I hope you have the same energy for Tisha. I want to see a meetup with you and Tisha where you have all this energy against Tisha. I don't think we're going to see it. So this is my next thing. Now, y'all remember that whole episode, or it was like 2 episodes a couple of seasons ago, where Miss Nell was throwing a huge fit about how she tired of doing this for her kids, giving them money, running to their aid, and they help all the time. And she was having a whole breakdown, and they had to have a huge family meeting. I'm like, Miss Nell, you did all that to turn right back around and encourage all your kids to bother the mess out of you again. Because y'all see how she got that sit down with her and her son Lance, offering to come and stay at his house and help him and his is that his, what is she? Because they got several kids together. So is she his wife, or what's going on with that? But anyway, she offered to go stay at their house and help him with his new baby, because he crying about not getting no sleep. Okay, sir, that's what happens when you have a newborn. Yeah. You have to not get sleep and still go to work. That's just how that happens. And so Miss Nell's like, I mean, do you think, would it help at all if you came over here? People staring. If I came over here and stayed a couple of nights out of the week? And Lance is like, that would help me a lot. You know, his whole face lit up like, yes. But he was like, but I think you might want to run that by Dad first. I'm like, Miss Nell, just be quiet when it comes to your kids. Because I'm like, Miss Nell reminds me a lot of me. Your kids, you let your kids and stuff wear you down. But at the same time, you don't know how to say no. So just be quiet and let them wear you down, honey. But that brings it to the next scene in conversation, and thing I thought was pretty funny. Chris meets up with Lance at Lance's job or whatever, because they want to talk about possibly Miss Nell coming staying at Lance's house for a couple of nights a week to help him with the new baby, so he can get a little shut eye sometimes. And so Chris suggests to Lance, why don't you, Martell might be a good person to mentor you on all this, because Martell is juggling being in construction, and he has his kids every other week, and he has to he's trying to balance parenting, and he has his own construction business. I'm like, I felt like there was two things wrong with that. I'm like, yeah, but kind of maybe not. I don't think Martell is that busy. I don't. I think Martell probably does work. He probably applies himself in some manner to get things done. But I don't think Martell is that busy. I think Martell is busy on trying to make a quick dollar off of his wife's name. I do. That's what I think Martell's main job is. And if he can try to get under his wife's skin so he can try to make some money off of her name, that's what he'll do. If he can take her to court to try to make money off his wife's name, that's what he'll do. But him being gung-ho on being in construction, building homes, that's like an afterthought. So I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, that's just my opinion on that. But it is like, I'm sure Martell's a hands-on dad, but Martell got a hot mess going on over there at his house. You might not want to be mentored by that. And then on top of that, I'm like, Lance, you ain't got a vagina. Martell ain't interested in spending extra time with you. That's the only thing Martell's interested in. So I'm like, Chris, But that is interesting that, I don't know, it's like, but that's just the boys' code. Chris, Martell, Marceau, Maurice, they quick to stick together. Okay, they stick together because they all got dirt. Like plenty of people have been saying they got dirt on each other, and so they may have a little bit of rough situations that come, and mostly because their wives bring it to them. But for the most part, they're gonna keep it chill with one another because they don't want none of them going haywire on them, which. Y'all see the little clips for next week's episode where Maurice is trying to claim that Martell's off his rocker and that he's worried about his mental health. I was like, that's interesting. We worried about Martell's mental. Y'all weren't worried about his mental health when he was harassing and dragging out of his ex-wife, even involving his kids in the mess. Y'all weren't worried about that man's mental health then? Are you serious? Anyway, that's for next week, y'all. But anyway, next we got here, yeah, because this video is getting too long. Tisha and Nell's sit down at the little coffee shop. Tisha is looking good in this episode too. Tisha's reminding me of Phaedra. She's having a bit of a glow up on this show. Tisha's looking good. But Tisha, once again, made me want to grab her. So Tisha comes in. Miss Nell don't get up and greet her. Nothing. Miss Nell's on her phone waiting for Tisha to sit down. Which you could be like, oh, that was rude. Why Miss Nell came with negative energy? But am I going to come with positive energy when the last time I saw you, you had your hands all up in my husband's face? I ain't going to come and be like, hey, girl, a little nice, easy hug. And I'm not about to play in your face like that. And I can tell Miss Nell's a grown woman. So she ain't about to do all that. And so, yeah, I wouldn't have got up and greeted her either because then like, it's doing everything for me to just stay right here, keep my butt in this chair so I don't grab you because you be playing in people's face. Tisha play in people's face. But anyway, so Tisha comes in, she sits down, and Miss Nell's like, okay, I want to address you putting your hands, how things went left at the birthday party. Like, you was on 100, and Tisha's like, I wasn't on 100, and Miss Nell's like, yeah, you was putting your hands in my husband's face, and I'm just kind of like, they conversation started off like they was just gonna be like little jokey with one another, keeping it light, but it turned bad real fast. And she was like, I was just like, okay, Tisha's kind of on 100, she put her hands in my husband's face, and she was like, I wasn't at 100. So then Tisha brings up, she was like, well, the issue is that this isn't the first, and she said, this is the second time that your husband brought up my husband's name. And Nell's like, what other situation are you talking about? And Tisha's like, in Atlanta, Your husband brought up my husband's name. And Miss Nell's like, Tisha, Marceau brought up Chris's name. Marceau put Chris in his story. And I'm like, yeah, Tisha, this is where you get egg on your face. Because it sounds like you done had these little conversations with your husband and he done sent you out there to look a fool as usual and then not back you up. Sent you out there looking a fool to like, yeah, he just keeps bringing me up and stuff. And I don't know why he bringing me up and stuff because he had to take pictures, a selfie as to where he was at and send it to his wife, talking about Miss Nell, to prove where he was at. And Tisha brings it up. She's like, because Marcel told me that Chris had to take a selfie to prove to you where he was at. Tisha, that does not make your husband Marcel look like he ain't out here cheating just because who he hanging with has to take a selfie to prove to their wife where they at. That even proves more that y'all be out there on some BS. So whoever is hanging out with your husband, they wife makes certain demands of them as to while they're hanging out with your husband. It's like, you ain't proved nothing in this. You look stupid. And so she's like, yeah, she thinks she reading the girls down with this. And Miss Nell's like, no, your husband told you, yeah, and they showed this little clip and scene of when, Tisha sitting there with tears welling up in her eyes because Marcel's like, well, yeah, I was there with the friend. And she gets this look on her face like, and it's like, he's like, yeah, I was there with Chris. And then she wipes her face. Your husband put Chris in his situation. Your husband put Chris in his mess. Saying that he was there with Chris, and Chris had to say, well, yeah, I did meet up with him briefly, but I wasn't with him all day. I don't know what else he did while he was there. I don't know that. And it's like, y'all want to claim that Chris and Nell are not mentors, but y'all constantly want to put them in the position where they got to be responsible for what everybody else is doing and what everybody else is saying in their circle. And it's like, that's not fair at all. Chris was there. He met up with Marceau, and Marceau probably specifically did that. Like, well, I'm going to meet up with Chris so he can have an alibi. Y'all remember when that whole picture came out with, it was allegedly Marceau's big back and some chick taking a picture of his big back. And even then you could tell that Tisha and her mama, Miss Wanda, was very bothered by that picture. Why? Because it probably actually did look like Marceau. Now, could it have not been Marceau? Of course it could not even been him. But it was so much, it's so believable that they were shook by it. And so I was like, your husband is putting excuse me, your husband is putting people in his mess. And then that's where the conversation really goes left. And Tisha's like, well, you gonna let me talk? And Miss Nell's like, you ain't gonna tell me how to act. So I'm not about to, you're not gonna sit here and try to tell me how to act and tell me that I'm raising my voice when you're the one actually raising your voice. And she was like, well, I'm done with this conversation. Yeah, I bet you are done, Tisha, because you done got egg on your face. You done came here, thought you was about to read somebody down, like, don't quit putting my husband's name and stuff, blah, 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 in your mouth and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, your husband's out here on some BS. He sends you to make a fool out of yourself. And he's putting other people in it because he thought he had a cute little alibi. But Chris was like, no, you're not about to make me your alibi. So anyway, y'all, I was like, Tisha, I cannot stand that. I do feel like that her and Marceau's relationship and marriage has been protected. I think the two of them at one point probably threatened to leave the show if their marriage kept getting brought up. And I think because at the time, I believe the producers were probably so afraid that the show was going to fall because they knew Martell and Melody were no longer going to be together. They were not going to be a thing anymore. That they allowed certain protections for them to keep their butts on this show. And they got it in their mind that they are now untouchable and can't nobody say nothing about them. And it's so freaking annoying. But we're going to see how all this stuff is going to play out. But I was so glad that Tisha got egg on her face trying to correct Miss Nell and check her about her husband putting Marceau's name in his mouth, blah blah blah. Like, no, your husband and your brother-in-law got mess going on, and it's all out of Huntsville streets, and you think it's so cute when you can try to quickly say, well, I got stuff on blah 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 blah. Yeah, you think you got stuff on other people, and you want to have stuff on other people because you know your name keeps getting brought up in dirt, and you want to be able to deflect and put the attention on other people, when it's like, you just need to quit trying to play in everybody's face, Tisha, because we know what's up. But anyway, y'all, that's enough. This video is way too long, and I gotta get off here because my phone keeps overheating. So, Ghetto Chronicles over here. All right, y'all. Y'all have a wonderful day. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye for now.
Accelerate permitting of AI projects, expand U.S. tech exports, and eliminate what the president called woke in AI. Now, the president's plan aims to block the government from contracting with tech companies unless they ensure that their systems are objective and free from what they call top-down ideological bias. Now, I asked White House officials on a call yesterday, who's going to decide what ideological bias is? They responded that what they're mostly concerned about is eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion values from AI.
I've decided to create this brand as a response to the recent push to weaponize the term woke as the enemy to peace. The term woke has aggressively been associated with ignorance, low class, and/or foolishness. For those who seek truth, here's the real meaning of woke and where it stems from originally. The initial meaning of woke meant being aware of racial prejudice and discrimination, often in the context of staying vigilant against injustice. The term woke originated with the 1920s Jamaican philosopher Marcus Garvey. Garvey emphasized unity between African Americans and the African diaspora. Woke was an insider term used to signal Black people to stay vigilant concerning racial discrimination and social injustice. The term woke has recently been expanded to include staying on the front lines of bringing awareness to all social injustice. As those in position of power and influence continue to exercise their right to oppress truth, circumvent justice, and promote division, we will do the opposite. In wearing this apparel, those of us who believe in a fair and just society, we will exercise our right to speak peace, truth, and progression aggressively. We will not be silenced. Link is in my bio or in the description box below.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Now you know.
Ugh.